In his senior year, Ross met Margot Birmingham.
I had a very good friend at college who wanted me to meet him, and she was going out with a friend of his, and she kept telling me that she was sure I'd like him and all those things, so she arranged a blind date.
We had a blind date in the fall of 1952, and I met Margot on that weekend and was very, very much impressed with her. And she was such a lovely person, and just, I guess they say every boy's looking for someone like his mother, but she had all those wonderful qualities that my mother had, and the most unique person I had met. So I fell in love immediately.
Margot was from Greensburg, Pennsylvania, and she was attending nearby Goucher College.
Margot went back to Goucher. It's located outside Baltimore. And at dinner on Sunday night, the girls said, well, Margot, I was a Texan. And they love to tell this story. Margot hates it. She hesitated for several seconds and said, well, he's really clean looking. And that was Margot's first reaction.
They dated for 4 years and married in 1956, a marriage which remained strong 40 years later.
He was mature. He always knew what he was about. He was strong in his beliefs and self-confident, and I really appreciated that about him.
Reporting for duty aboard the USS Sigourney at 2 a.m. on his 23rd birthday, the young ensign began one of the great adventures of his life. 9 months aboard a destroyer, crossing 17 seas and visiting 22 countries. The young man who hitchhiked across Texas couldn't believe he was lucky enough to have an opportunity to see the world. He was the junior officer aboard ship at the end of the Korean War.
The junior officer aboard ship gets all the odd assignments. That's how I got to be chaplain, not because of any particular training. So I had to hold service on the fantail, that's the back of the ship, every Sunday. And to my amazement, we had an overflow crowd. And after several weeks of this, I thought that I might be the next Billy Graham. Then we got to Midway Island. I'll never forget it. And the truce was signed. And the next Sunday, service attendance dropped.
It was aboard his next ship, the aircraft carrier Leyte, where Ross got a lucky break. While working on the bridge as assistant navigator, he was introduced to an executive from IBM who offered him a job when he left the Navy.
Nobody ever offered me a job. I always had to look for work. I'm now 27 years old. You're the first person in my life who ever offered me a job. You bet I would like to have an interview with IBM, and I don't even know what you do. Now, that was the bad part. He just broke out laughing. He says, you don't know what IBM does? And I said, no, sir. He said, well, one of the reasons we're interested in you, Ross, is the captain tells me you really know a lot about the fire control computers on the ship that control the weapons. And I said, well, yes, sir, that's something I've had a lot of experience with. And he said, well, we're in the computer business.
The rest is history. Ross and Margot packed everything they owned into the back of their car and headed for Texas.
Everything we owned was in the back of a 1952 Plymouth. Every worldly possession. We were as happy then as we are now. My point being that tangible things don't bring happiness. Happiness is a state of mind.
Ross entered the IBM training program with great enthusiasm, ranking first in his sales training class at the computer giant, and began a meteoric rise to the top of the sales force at IBM.
I was selling computers at a time when everybody wanted a computer. It was sort of like selling umbrellas when it's raining. You could make your quota and not work too hard. But I had always worked hard. I was trained to work hard from childhood, and I enjoyed working hard. So I worked hard all day, and that was the reason that I had a very successful sale record.
In 1958, the young couple started their family with the arrival of Ross Jr. They worked hard and saved their money. Margot taught school, and after several years, they bought their first house. The leadership principles instilled in Ross as a naval officer were now reinforced at IBM, and once again he thrived in the competitive environment. He sold at such a high rate, the company cut his commission. The young salesman was eager for a new challenge. He had become a problem solver, and he was ready to take on something bigger. As his young family grew, he developed a new idea in the computer business: to sell a fully operational computer hardware and software system.
And so I didn't quite know what to do. I tried to get IBM to do it. And to IBM's credit, they heard me out to the top. And I was sitting in the barbershop one day reading a Reader's Digest and read a quote from Perot: "The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation." And I said to myself, that's it, I've got to try it.
He set out on his own to make his idea a success. He borrowed $1,000 from Margot, named his mother, his sister, and Margot as corporate directors, and EDS was born. The company's only employee, Ross Perot. Calling on the sales and leadership skills instilled in him since a boy, Ross hit the road to try and sell his idea to corporate America. It was not an overnight success, but Ross stuck with it.
You have to go back to childhood. I started to work when I was 6. Every job I had ever had, I wasn't paid anything until I sold something. My first job was selling Christmas cards. And I knocked on a lot of doors for every time I'd sell a Christmas card. I was used to it. Then I sold Saturday Evening Post. Then I sold garden seeds.
Finally, on his 78th sales call, Ross closed his first contract and the company took off, solving complex problems for the nation's largest corporations. To transform his dream into what would become a company of 95,000 employees and $12.4 billion in revenue, Ross built a team.
I said, I don't care who you are, I don't care where you come from, I don't care where you went to school, I don't care if you went to school, I don't care what race, religion, or color you are. And I was interrupted by a recruiter who said, do you care about anything? And I said, yes. I'm dead interested in what these folks that you're looking for can do, and I'm interested in what they've done lately. In other words, what are their skills, and what have they done lately, and what are their characteristics? And we want that honest, tough, smart, self-reliant characteristic.
As EDS grew, Ross Perot gained world attention. In 1969, he was asked to launch a major project to embarrass the North Vietnamese into changing the harsh treatment they were giving American prisoners of war.
President Nixon asked me to do it. The thing that triggered this is they got a study that indicated they thought that 50% of the men would die from brutality and neglect before the end of the war, and they thought it would take 3 years to Vietnamize the whole process and withdraw. So our challenge was to try to embarrass the North Vietnamese into changing the treatment. They asked me if I would do it. I said, certainly I will do it. I had friends who were prisoners.
Ross flew to Laos to meet with the North Vietnamese and Russian ambassadors, bringing with him a plane load of food, medical supplies, and Christmas presents for the POWs from their families.
And the Vietnamese ambassador rejected accepting all of these things, which was better than having them delivered because that angered the world. So we brought the goods home. And the net of it is, though, they changed the treatment of the prisoners dramatically while we were still on the ground in Laos.